Hey there, everybody. Good morning or good afternoon or good evening. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Friday Morning at the Fun House with Mr. Martin Popoff. Good morning, my friend. We got the
Yes,
fog
morning.
here in New York this morning.
Oh yeah, no, we don't get fog. We got nice warm days today and yesterday, so it'll be good to get out on a jog or on my new bike or whatever. But yeah, it's looks like we get some turnaround here into spring. So
Cool. Yeah, we've had some warmish days this week after we had snow last weekend. Yesterday it rained all day. Today it's kind of rainy, but the fog is like literally I can barely see the trees across the street.
yeah,
That's how thick the fog is. So I don't know what that means. I guess it's a meeting of the cold and warm fronts or something nonsense like that. I'm not a meteorologist, so I don't know all the technical jargon, but looks like a crappy day in New York. But whatever. Warmer days are ahead. That's the important thing. And today we're going to talk about some of our favorite, really obscure albums. So today's Obscurities Day. So for those of you who may have just tuned in and you hear the word obscure and you're thinking, I don't know if I should watch this episode because they're not talking about Black Sabbath or Deep Purple or Iron Maiden or Judas Priest, and I'm not going to know any of these bands. Well, that's the point of something like this. These are albums that Martin and I both really, really like a lot, and we just can't understand why more people don't know about them. So again, these could be releases that came out on independently or even on a major label, but just sank without a trace. We love them. We don't understand why they didn't, sell millions of copies and why more people aren't talking about them. We're going to talk about it today. So what we're asking is everybody to hang in here with us. We're going to tell you why we like these so much and why you should go out and listen to them. And that's the thing. So go check these albums out. We'll put the list of the albums in the video description below or in the comments section so you can go investigate them, listen to them, and come back and let us know what you think about it. Because we love these albums and we think you would too. So with all that being said, we'll have Martin kick us off with his first selection of the day.
yeah. So the idea here was again, I find it really hard to listen to somebody talk about something I know nothing, some album I don't know anything about. And as soon as I hear what genre it's in, it's like maybe it's a genre I don't care about. And then it's like, listen through this kind of thing. But hopefully these have kind of cool stories to them and it sparks some of your interest. But the other cool thing about this is when we came up with this one, these are albums, at least at my end, that I love to death, that I really want to proselytize about and say, look, if you're at all interested in the kind of way I'm describing this music, go check it out because, or check this specific thing out about it and that. And it's like, I felt like that yesterday. We did a Contrarians on Genesis Duke. And, we had a panel of 6 people all talking about Duke. And there was like the pointing out, one of the guys there, Todd, pointed out, go listen to the last minute and a half of Cul-de-sac. It's like when someone sends you to something to listen to that you can't picture in your head and the description gets you excited. That's kind of cool, right? Yeah. When you're sent away to do something like that. So let's jump in here and see what you think of this idea. But and these are really obscure albums in most cases, again, that a lot of people don't know about. So my first one is this one here, Grootna. And forgive me if I tried to look in various shows if I've talked about any of this stuff before, because I feel like I have. But maybe not with you, Pete, but maybe I have as an aside. But I even looked up, like, because one of these is like a 1-album band. I go, did Pete and I do a 1-album show? And then I saw you've done that with other people. I'm not sure we've done it. And then I thought, okay, I'm not spotting one. So maybe not. Maybe I haven't talked about this. But anyways, here we go. This happens to be a 1-album band. So this is essentially a band that Marty Balin from Jefferson Airplane, he leaves Jefferson Airplane in 71. He goes and produces this album called Grootna. It's on CBS. And it's the only thing he does with them. And then he takes a couple of members away and starts another band that I think only had 1 album as well, called Bodacious DF. But this Grootna album, what I love about it is, like, look at the back cover of it. The back cover looks incredibly indie, like some sort of old Hawkwind Free Festival type record from the UK. But it's actually a very, very quintessentially California type band. And what I like about it, it's got dual male and female vocals. And this is a tangent I can go down forever too. But I did a History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff podcast episode on this, on finding these dual male female vocals and realizing, like, just getting hit by lightning and saying, I've played these 5 albums in rotation like 200-300 times. And then it just dawned on me, okay, after 2,000 listens of these albums, I go, man, every one of these is dual male and female vocals. That's bizarre, right? You know, I'm thinking subconsciously, oh, I'm kind of on a female vocal kick, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's no, they both have like they're half male and half female vocals. And this is kind of like that as well. But what I love about this is the female vocalist, Anna Rizzo. She only, and it's a very, very hippie album. Like that's what they look like, right? Just the quintessential, you know, upper California kind of hippie look, right? And it's a kind of an up-tempo hippie thing. And there's Anna Rizzo in the middle. She never did anything ever again. And I just love her vocals on here because they're so they're kind of a little bit wild and sharp and flat, and the phrasing is really weird, and there's a lot of instrumentation. There's even some horns a little bit here and there, but it's typical kind of hippie music. But the mellow songs on here, I just love to death. There's one called Going to Canada and one for Waiting for My Ship. And the Going to Canada is about, she's just like trying to escape all her troubles and just take off and go to Canada, right? And Waiting for My Ship is one where there's this weird lyric about, you know, I sold my soul to the devil, and my friends thought that was not cool. And I said, I was broke and it was out of sight, and all this really, really interesting, odd lyric in it. But yeah, I just like the way that it's a 72 album. And I like the way that it's this sort of later weird, tired, fatiguing era in the hippie situation. It's 72. You know, you think of 72, 73, 74 is a really weird year for rock and roll and just the changing of the culture, right? You know, Vietnam's ending and all that kind of stuff. So 72, it's almost like a carryover from the Psych thing, but it's more like country rock, boogie woogie, and these beautifully kind of arranged with a lot of instrumentation ballads on it as well. So yeah, that's just a record that I've just played to death, and just you just glom onto something. There's no real reason for it, and you just fixate and play it over and over. I think I've mentioned this before, but I remember talking to Devin Townsend once, and this idea of fixating on an album where you go, you know, I said to him, or he said to me, and we just agreed and laughed about it. It's like how you know, you take a bunch of albums that you have and they're all 7.5s, and then one of them's like a 458 because you just play it over and over and over, and the playing of it over and over and over just cements it even more in your mind somehow. Like you pass some barrier where it just becomes part of your brain. And that's actually one of those. So I'll stop on Grootna there because I have lots to ramble about on other ones as well.
What's amazing is everything you just said, and you didn't talk about Marty at all. That just tells you that it's all about more than just him, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I've never heard of that band. I love the band name, and as soon as you showed the back cover and I saw all those members lined up there, I'm thinking probably got it. Even before you said anything, probably has to have two vocalists, probably a horn player, probably a couple guitar players. Yeah.
Look at that, eh? Yeah. Just a weird fashion sense of it's just California post 60s hippies, right?
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Country rocking, you know, it looks like the Span Ranch and the Manson gang almost, right? You know, because it's just so back to they look like pioneers from the 1800s, right?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
I will agree with you. Bands that do the male and female vocal thing well are a joy to listen to, and tons have done it. Not all of them do it equally, but the way, I mean, just think of some of the one, you know, the Airplane, the Starship, and Fleetwood Mac, and I mean, there's tons of other examples. Rosin Collins was all female vocals, but yeah, I mean, there's the ones that do it well. That's a really good thing. So cool. I'm gonna have to check them out. I love the band name too. That's really kind of different. All right, so my first selection of the day is from 1977. I'm going to be kind of all over the place. I got some more recent ones, and I've got some from the glory days here. So this album is a debut album from this band, British band, signed to Arista Records, their debut, and then they kind of disappeared off the face of the earth, England Garden Shed.
Wow, I don't even know that. Never seen that in my life. Wow.
Okay. So, all right. So, and I do want to preface before I go on with this, because Martin mentioned before, you know, he can't remember if he ever mentioned any of these bands before. You folks who really pay attention and have been with me a long time here on SOT, I might have talked about some of these albums at some point in time here on the show. But what I like is that we're just doing this sort of thing on an episode like this. So if you've heard me talk about these albums before, just stick with me. Hopefully I'll say a couple different things about them. And for those of you who have never seen me talk about these albums before, well, you've come to the right place here. So yeah, Martin, I think you would absolutely love this album. So this is a debut album, Arista Records. This album basically, again, 1977, the heyday of prog is kind of already come and gone. You still got bands like Yes and Genesis who are, making money and selling, big numbers. But for the most part, 77, prog is already dead. This band was quickly, after this album was released, quickly dropped by the label. Band breaks up shortly thereafter. But it's one of the finest examples of British progressive rock of the era, without question. Huge vocal harmonies. If you love classic Yes and Queen and Supertramp and maybe the Moody Blues, man, you've come to the right place. Loads of mini Moog synthesizers, tons of Mellotron, really, really nice guitar work. Like I said, the vocal harmonies are absolutely spectacular. You got songs like Midnight Madness, Poison You, Three-Piece Suite, joyous arrangements. Wow. Nice interplay between the guitars and the keyboards, but more importantly, the songs are really, really memorable. It's really well produced. And it's just, it's one of those, like, you listen to this and you're like, how the hell was this album not huge? And I think that the best thing I could say about it, again, 1977, if this came out 3 to 4 years earlier, still on Arista Records, this would have been mentioned as one of the greats of the early 70s prog rock scene, alongside all those great albums from Genesis and Yes and ELP, Jethro Tull, so on and so forth. That it's so professional sounding for a debut album. Jeez. It's absolutely mind-boggling that, they released something else later on, which was like some unused tracks and things like that. But this is really their only standout official release. And it's a mind blower. It's, as my good friend Ken Golden says from the Laser's Edge, this is a buy or die release. If you don't have Garden Shed by England, you need it. It's pretty pricey to find these days. I think LPs are going for like $300-400. You could probably get a CD for $50 or less if you can find it, but it's absolutely worth it. Just go and stream. If you can find it somewhere online to listen to, you won't regret it. It's amazing. Really great.
Definitely going to do that. Yeah. I've never seen that cover, but what a cool name of the band, England. Wow.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And no famous members from previous past or later, nobody went on to great fame or.
No, I mean, here's the guys in the band. Martin Henderson is bass and vocals, Frank Holland, guitar and vocals, Robert Webb, keyboard vocals, Jode Lay on drums, vocals, and some bass. That's it. So they all sang. So that's the one thing. It's like vocally, you'll be hearing like Queen circa the first couple albums, Supertramp, with the two vocalists there. Also, do you remember Aviary?
Yep.
Kind of along those lines vocally, although the music is much more complex and more like kind of Yes or early Genesis or what have you. But just absolutely gorgeous stuff and really catchy songs too. Cool. Great out.
Cool. Well, I'm going to jump all over the place in styles and eras too, because I really didn't want to bore everybody, bore somebody with every single one of my entries. So I wanted to go for various variety as well. So we're going to go radically different from Grootna here. Sons of Freedom from Vancouver. Wow. This record, unbelievable record, recorded by, produced by Matt Wallace. It was done at Little Mountain. The band consists of Jim Newton on like long blonde hair, guitar and vocals, and 3 guys named Don. They're all named Don. Bass, guitar, drums. An incredible sound of these guys. They basically did that album, then they did the Gump album, and then they did this Tex album. And that's all they did. And, 88, so they're kind of early in on the grunge thing before grunge sort of picks up. But the arresting quality of this album is that the songs are so simple and they're based on just pounding, buzzing, distorted bass and hypnotic, straightforward drum grooves. But they're all different from each other, but they're all simple. which is really, really odd. Now where this really comes into play and makes this band mythic and godly to me, and you know, a cult following up here in Canada, is that they played the university circuit quite a bit. And I saw them live a lot, and they had some very, very stunning sort of stage sets. Like one was where they were all in lab coats, white lab coats, and their only lighting was about like a swinging bare light bulb about that big, and that's all they had for lighting. Wow. And the amazing thing about it, and I hope it comes through on the album when you go check this out. And they've got videos that they made, proper production videos up here in Canada. But I hope it comes through on the album, and I think it does, because I was even playing it again this morning and just marveling at how great it was. But the idea of having those big drum grooves and big distorted bass lines comes over so great live when you're a university student with a few beers in you, right? In a small club, and they're playing super loud. I mean, think of your most magical, you know, loving watching Motorhead or something like that, right? It's a little bit like that, and the lyrics and the whole vocal delivery is kind of really laconic, and you know, apparently this is another one of those bands where multiple members got into heroin, and that probably killed the band. You know, this album is just called Sons of Freedom, but some people call it, based after the, you know, the quote on it, never retract, never retreat, never apologize, get the thing done and let them howl. But yeah, an absolute masterpiece. Nothing else out there in the world sounds like this. You know, you might compare it a little bit to your favorite very, very heavy U2 songs in a way, but way heavier, and also kind of darker and doomier. Maybe a little Killing Joke to it, maybe a little grunge to it, I suppose. But you know, the names of the songs: Super Cool Wagon, the first song of the album, the only lyrics to it are away, 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 oh, and just like over and over. And the cool thing about the simple thing that they do is every once in a while, there'll be kind of like a slight twist in things, or a new riff added, or a little break. And that's what's good about simplicity, right? There's a little bit, I was going to do, still thinking about it, a podcast episode on when you got a band who does a song and then later on they throw it in double time just to give you something new, like the classic example is For Those About to Rock, right? But so there's not that particular thing on here, but there's the idea of doing a twist on simple and having it really enhance what's going on. When you've got simple, you've got a lot of room to do things with those few instruments you're doing. So just a killer, bizarre album where it's, you know, on the face of it, it's not completely bizarre because of its conservativeness, but nobody else has ever done a record like that. It's the only album that sounds like that. And then these ones are, you know, a slight variation on the theme, but the debut is just an absolutely incredible album. And yeah, go check out the videos. You'll see what I mean about their visual presentation. It's just a really cool, creepy Vancouver downtown east side, squalid, but just like big crazy stunk and bass and drums, U2 Bullet the Blue Sky kind of sound to them. So there you go, Sons of Freedom. And
just the 3 albums, that's all they released?
Yeah, and even one of them semi-compilation-y, and then the second one, it was considered, they went a little commercial, and it was years later, and you're starting to feel the heroin vibe, right? Like this band is not, they're kind of screwing up in various ways, and then they kind of fade away. No one ever does anything ever again. Yeah, it's one of those weird situations like that. But yeah, that debut is it just stands alone out there in the world as this godly occult talisman of you know, weird pre-grunge Vancouver music.
Interesting. Yeah, we could probably do a whole episode on how drugs kind of killed careers of really promising bands, right?
Yeah.
All right. Kind of like Martin, I'm gonna be scooting up to more recent times. So I'm going to go from 77 to 2016 here on this next one. This was released on the Svart Records label, SVART. Pretty cool little small Scandinavian label. It's got a lot of really interesting bands of all walks of life. Like I said, this one came out in 2016. I believe this was their second or third album. It's a Scandinavian band. They've got members from Sweden and Norway. The band is called Brutus. The album is called Wandering Blind. Okay. For all of you kind of proto-metal, early 70s style blues, heavy blues rock, you have come to the right place. These guys put the oomph back in heavy early 70s style blues rock. I believe it's a 5-piece, 2 guitars, bass, drums, and vocals. Tons of kind of proto metal doom riffing, but the arrangements are fairly up tempo, really solid vocals. It just kind of like takes you back to like 1971. Think of like the first couple of Black Sabbath albums, early Grand Funk Railroad, Leaf Hound, Johnny Winter when he was at his most rockin', early Led Zeppelin, Humble Pie, maybe Cactus, that sort of thing. And also, I guess if you're someone, this is one of those bands, this one and the next one I'm going to talk about are some of these bands coming from, the Scandinavian area, where you have some other really notable bands that people have picked up on, like Graveyard or Witchcraft or Horizont, and those are more notable. There's a lot of other bands that have come from that scene that just nobody knows about. These guys are one of them. Just maybe even like early period Pentagram. So if you've ever had been able to listen to some of those early Pentagram recordings before they got signed, Pentagram was kind of doomy, but very much early blues rock. That's kind of similar to this. The vocalist on here sounds like a mix between like early Ozzy and young Bobby Liebling from Pentagram. Big thunderous drums, kick-ass screaming guitar solos. A lot of fun. If you want to check out any notable songs from here, check out the title track, Wandering Blind. Axeman is a really great song, and the song Creepin' is really, really cool, but the whole album is good. Any of their albums are really, really enjoyable. It just totally takes you back. If you love that retro sound, you will love Brutus. Just open this digipack up so you can kind of see what the inside looks like. I mean, that just tells you everything you need to see, like freaking 1972 biker rock, right?
Yeah.
Killer stuff. Nice. So yeah, Brutus, Wandering Blind. Check it out.
Cool. Very nice. Yeah. Man, yeah, love that artwork on her.
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay, so my next one is the first one I thought of when we thought of this concept. I could probably go on for 4 hours about this, but I'll try to keep it to 2 hours. Here we go. So these trails, I swear to God, if you've watched a million shows with me on the internet, I mean, the odd time anybody asks me, what's your favorite album of all time? I'll rattle off a few things and then I'll just throw this in once in a while because this is one of my favorite albums of all time. 1973 Hawaiian indie release, Weird Folk, WYRD. It's acoustic guitars, dulcimer, some of the apparently earliest examples of really tasteful, interesting synthesizer work, and kind of like the one guy who had these early synthesizers in Hawaii. This is one of those $1,000 album situations. This is one of those not great reissues of it, and I think there's a better reissue. Nothing about this band really on the internet. The one thing the cult of these trails has to hang their hat on is the pretty good, decent, explanatory Pitchfork review of the album, but there's no biographical information. It is some of the most stunning female vocals you'll ever hear. And again, this is one of these that was in that weird bunch of dual male female vocal ones for me. I've played this hundreds and hundreds of times. Absolutely. It's got some of the greatest female vocals you'll ever hear, kind of in a Joni Mitchell mode, but even more pristine, with a little bit of a Hawaiian, as they say, pidgin English, sort of, adopting or adapting a little bit, only occasionally, a little bit of a Hawaiian sort of accent, I suppose. But and super, super high. There's a song on here near the end called Rapt Attention. It's only 2 minutes and 15 seconds long, and it reminds me of the whole Brad Delp going high, high, high thing. It's just unbelievable. But the incredible thing about it, gorgeously recorded. What I love about it the most is how Jimmy Page is sort of considered one of the greats of acoustic guitar, and then we kind of say, well, maybe he's a little overrated. I think Nick Drake there's even more per capita greatness on Nick Drake albums. The acoustic guitar work on here is so interesting and odd, and a little bit Hawaiian. Again, this got me kind of researching Hawaiian slack key tuning, and I listened to a fair bit of that stuff, and then I couldn't find it again, unfortunately. But so that's amazing on here as well. It's very spooky. Like I say, it is weird folk. And there's a song on here called Hello Lou, which is one that it's oddly the only one that's not printed in the lyric sleeve of this little crappy reissue I have. And it's this weird song where it sounds like they're talking about Lucifer, but in very, very kind of like weird, like nature terms. I don't know. It's odd. Hang on. I had it,
so like kind of like a pagan folk type of thing, right?
Yeah. So I actually called up the lyrics because it goes like, hello, keeper of the keys. You passed my doorway in the night, a fallen star, scared to fright, going home to rest. Glad you came today. So it's like you could picture this cottage out in Hawaii, out in the wilderness, and a knock on the door. And there's this someone comes by. Okay, that's cool. Then they go away. And then it's hello, morning's nipping wind. So like the weather's picking up. So you think of like Bigfoot and weather and you know, missing 411 and all that stuff with the rain across my face. And then all of a sudden tearing branches from the trees. So it's like, oh, I open my door. It's raining. Now the rain's on me. Now the branches are coming off the trees. Well, that's kind of interesting. Glad you came today, though you appeared unsettled at your ease. Glad you came today. Then it's hello, Lou. Oh, so sly, dressing up in jester's guise. So now someone's coming to the door in the middle of Hawaii, in the middle of the wilderness, dressed up in jester's guise, right? Riding easy on the wind, laughing with the sun. So there's kind of this weird, like godly thing going on. Now, I'm the only person on earth who loves this album so much and is so obsessed by it. I tracked down Patrick Crockett and interviewed him. And I also tracked down Margaret Morgan's sister, because Margaret Morgan, this is another situation like Anna Rizzo. It's the only thing she ever did, and it's my favorite female vocal performance ever by anybody. Only thing she ever did. She had some mental health problems, and she became a hippie and got into like various different religions and stuff and moved to California. And I guess this is not like a native Hawaiian family. Apparently, talking to Karen, you know, they had like sugar plantations and stuff like this. I have a documentary, music documentary buddy that I've been trying to talk into doing a documentary on this album. It's that cool and that important, right? But she died in 2002. Never made another record in her whole life. A lot of this record, there's a little bit of the whole. She had a romantic dalliance with this Patrick Crockett, and it didn't go well, and they were breaking up during the making of the album. The album, it was never really a band. There's some other like high-end Hawaiian musicians on the album. So it's a little bit of these people together, but yeah, so it's her and him, only thing they ever did, 1973. I have this stuff and I've never used it for anything, but seems like no one's ever interviewed them. And I interviewed her sister and got the whole story of the album and how the mother was really old and wasn't happy that Patrick reissued it. And Patrick saying, well, look, it's good to be out there. It's really cool. And, you know, it didn't make any money or whatever, but, you know, it was nice to have a reissue. So there's a good reissue of it. But yeah, I've got an interview with Patrick and I've got an interview with Karen. I've never really done anything with it. I just needed to know more of the mystery of this record, because you go on the internet, there's nothing out there. There's that one review. And I think there's some good liner notes in one of the reissues, but that's it. Yep, definitely one of my favorite albums of all time. Stupid album cover, stupid name, just called These Trails. Check it out. It's the quietest, most peaceful, softest record you'll ever hear. It's just the absolute all the way diametrically opposed, 1,000 miles away from heavy metal. It's the quietest record you'll ever hear as well. There you go.
So how did you stumble upon that album?
Boy, how did I?
The $1 million question, right?
Yeah, I just don't know. It might have just been the classic, like looking around for stuff on the internet. You know, because I don't own a vinyl copy of it. I mean, like I say, it's one of those $600,000 deals. I didn't feel like going out and buying one. But it would be amazing to own one of these. But oh yeah, Rusty's House, about this famous Hawaiian surfer and how they just walk through the woods, and as they're walking up the path, the flowers bend your way as you're walking to Rusty's house. They go to Rusty's house. Rusty is just down surfing. He just leaves his house wide open, the doors are open, the wind is going through, you just go into his house, sit down, they make allusions to, like, we smoked a joint in Rusty's house and just left. And it's just the weirdest lyric. There's one about ghosts in the waves, dancing in the waves with ghosts and stuff. It's so really cool about Hawaii and nature and all this. But honestly, yeah, I don't remember how I came across it, but yeah, just absolutely, one of my favorite albums of all time, for sure.
Okay. I gotta check that. I've never heard of him. Sounds like a weird sort of release coming from Hawaii, of all places, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit, it's a tiny bit Hawaiian. Certainly the second song on it is very Hawaiian. It's about picking bananas and mowing the lawn and all this kind of stuff. But the rest of it is basically like the very best Nick Drake songs from the first two Nick Drake albums, the one where it's just acoustic and him kind of thing. Or actually, that would be the last one. Yes, sorry, the last one and the first one, I think. I think the middle one of Nick Drake is the one with more arrangements, right? I think. Anyways, it's just super quiet and intimate and acoustic. But yeah, the greatest, most sophisticated, complicated, interesting acoustic guitar licks that you'll probably ever hear.
Okay. Yeah, cool. All right, I'm going to stick in 2016 for two in a row here. For all you Power Trio fans out there, you like Power Trios? All right, here's one you absolutely have to listen to. This came out on the Transubstans Records label, another Swedish label here. Mangrove, Days of the Wicked. Okay. Absolutely
shot. Yeah.
Outstanding. Yeah, this is a hell of an album. Three guys, the guys in the band: Frederick Brockvist on drums, Johnny Kachaga on lead, backing vocals, bass and organ, and Magnus Jernstrom on screaming electric guitars and acoustic guitars. The best way to describe this band, especially this album, they have a couple albums, but this is my favorite out of all of them. Think the first two Black Sabbath albums, mix a little bit of Vincebus Eruptum, the first Blue Cheer album, throw in a little bit of Budgie, a little bit of Deep Purple, a little bit of Cactus. There you have it. Big, bluesy, oftentimes doomy riffs. The vocalist sounds like Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath era Ozzy. Moody atmosphere, face-melting guitar solos, and just big crushing songs. I mean, just off the top of my head, Mangronaut, Demon Spirit, killer song. Gambler is a great song. Into the Light, In the Shade. A couple tracks are more kind of like atmospheric and really moody. Others are just big, heavy bruising. There's a couple like really crushing blues rock tracks on there. Vocals are great. Kick-ass arrangements, very memorable songs. Man, if you love early 70s heavy rock, there is absolutely no reason why you should not check this band out. They're so good, and the riffs are just absolutely so crushing. I love the production of the album. It's bands like this. I mean, there are, I've talked about it plenty on the channel over the last like 10 years about this whole movement of retro sounds coming out of Sweden and the Scandinavian era. This is one of the best bands coming from that scene that I've heard over the last decade. Such a good album. I mentioned this band to lovers of like hard rock and metal, and they're like, Mangrove, what is that, those little things that grow along the shores of Florida, whatever? It's like, no, it's a great band from Sweden that deserves your attention. Yeah, check this out immediately. Great album. Days of the Wicked by Mangrove. So good. Again, if you love both this and the Brutus album, if you love early 70s heavy music, no brainer. Both bands.
Funny, you could spend the whole rest of your life listening to new music that sounds like old music and never leave the realm of that kind of music, right?
You don't have to, right? Yeah. And that's why I don't understand when people say that there's no good, rock music or hard rock or metal music being made anymore. And, the only good music was done in the 70s and the early 80s. Well, if if you think that, and you maybe don't like the new music that your old heroes are making, there's plenty of younger bands that are making music that kind of takes you back to that era. That is just really, really great music. That's a perfect example of that. That is a can't miss album. It's so heavy, so infectious, and just brimming with life. But yet, the production sounds like it could have come from like 71, 72, 73. It's the retro stuff. There's a lot of great retro stuff out there if you like that sort of thing. But then people are like, well, if I want to hear, someone sounding like Black Sabbath, I'll go listen to the early Black Sabbath stuff. I get that. But if you want new, they have a similar sound, but none of the songs are ripoffs of any old Sabbath stuff. Just great album. And got that bluesy edge, which, folks I know really like that. So
nice. Cool. All right. My next one is this one here. And this is one I did look up. It's like, did I ever talk about DMZ before? And it might have been an aside, but essentially, so we're going, diametrically opposed to any of the quiet stuff I've been talking about. This came out in 1978 on Sire. And for a lot of years, they were kind of talked about as semi-important. We've got it signed by Jeff Connolly there, Mono Man. He wrote on a scale of 1 to 10, ? Thanks, Martin. So I wrote up the whole story of this album in one of my old Yule Metals storybooks. But they only made the one album. But, as for bands that have kind of a mythical vibe to them, there were kind of a compilation things. So that's a vinyl compilation record called Relics. They had some neat singles that came out, and then this one, the When I Get Off CD, again compiling a lot of the old stuff. So their sound was essentially kind of like the Stooges, New York Dolls, fairly heavy. Dictators, they really remind me of the Dictators because they are a bunch of long hairs making punk rock, which is a little bit of what the Dictators sound like, I suppose, on the second and third album the most. There's that great band shot on the back, pretty cool. So it's quite heavy. It's well produced for 1978. There's a lot of variety. And what you also get from Jeff Connolly, Mono Man, he's such a complete musicologist, music freak, that he went on later and had a band called The Liars, which is more of like the two bands you've just talked about, Brutus and Mangrove. This whole idea of being retro to a certain era. So they're like a retro garage rock band. He loves garage rock, and he's a big scholar of a garage rock, like a Lenny Kaye. So this has a component of garage rock, a component of punk rock, and a component of heavy metal on it, I'd say. And they only made the one album, DMZ, like I say, and it's just really cool. They're from Boston, and I picked them because, if we did this show 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I probably wouldn't have said they were that obscure because they were kind of talked about. But I noticed with some of these bands that they also have been rapidly forgotten over time. That happens with some of these bands, right? Yeah. Where you think, everybody knows DMZ. They're in magazines. They got a lot of press. Because I'm thinking 78, 79, 80, it's like everybody kind of knew DMZ. They were legendary, like the New York Dolls or the Stooges or MC5. They were just a band kind of everybody sort of knew, but then just go away. And there's just not a lot on them really on the internet either. But only the one album, pretty cool album. If you like that whole everything I just talked about with these kinds of bands, and good production, a lot of variety, a little bit of humor. Definitely, if you like the Dictators, I think you'll like DMZ.
I like that back cover photo a lot.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Cool. Well, so I'm going to stay in Sweden once again. That there seems to be kind of like a trend here, right? I probably could have done all my picks of Swedish bands throughout the last 40 years or so. So this particular band does not exist anymore. And I think like hardcore prog fans know a lot about them. They released a couple albums, and then they morphed into another band, which I'll talk about in a second too. But the band is called Black Bonzo, and this is their self-titled debut from 2004. And this was, what label was this on? I don't know, some local independent Swedish label. Cool album cover, great band. Like I said, they released, I believe it was 4 records, and then they broke up, and they some of the members formed this other band called Gin Lady, which is also a really fine band, but not really a prog band. Gin Lady is more of like a 70s hard rock band, a lot of Rolling Stones elements, good, really good band but it's much different, but maybe we'll talk about them another time. But Black Bonzo, this debut album, again, Swedish band, but they have a very British sound. They are a throwback to the early 70s Prague and hard rock scene, specifically the British bands. So like if you're into like the kind of wild instrumentation of Yes and the multi-part vocal harmonies of Yes, mixed with really heavy Hammond organ like Deep Purple, Uriah Heep. A lot of the vocal harmonies also bring to mind Freddie Mercury, Roger Taylor, Brian May from Queen. There are some elements of kind of like Pomp, kind of like Styx, as well as maybe early Kansas, and the Mellotron arrangements remind a little bit of the Moody Blues, like the first like 5 or 6 albums. Excellent vocals, lots of catchy vocal harmonies. Like I said, I mean, a song like Lady of the Light, which kicks it all off, wonderful song. Reminds also a little bit of Starcastle. Like if you like the first or second Starcastle album, you know, kind of like it's got this like Yes backbone to it, but very commercial sounding vocals, blistering guitars, loads of Hammond organ. Everybody always says, oh, I get all excited when I say Hammond organ and my eyes pop out of my head. I love Hammond organ, right? A ton of it on here, loads of Mellotron. I bought this when it first came out and I fell completely head over heels in love with this album. And like I said, hardcore, loyal prog fans who investigate a lot of the more current scene know of these guys. But if you kind of stop listening to prog rock after like the 70s, you probably never heard of Black Bonzo. This is a mandatory album to check out. Their follow-up, which was Sound of the Apocalypse, also really good. And but I'm just amazed. Like I bring up the name of this band, and most people are kind of like, you know, it's a weird sounding name, Black Bonzo. I get it, but an amazing album. And this band has, you know, like I said, they broke up. They only released a handful of albums. Really forgotten and really missed. This is a killer 5 out of 5 star album without a doubt. So good. Like I said, if you love like early Uriah Heep, Deep Purple, you love Yes, you love Styx and the Moody Blues, and especially Queen, early Queen, you will absolutely love this album. It's heavy, it's light, it's proggy, it's poppy, like everything all mixed into one. Awesome album.
Cool. Sounds like a slightly mellower version of a Big Elf situation, a little bit, right?
You know what? And I would say, you know, Big Elf's got more of that kind of like Beatles meets Sabbath thing going on. Yeah. And I would say parts of this album are heavy, like some of the heavier Big Elf stuff. But definitely there are some similarities there. If you like Big Elf, I think Big Elf, tremendous band. You probably will dig these guys because Big Elf, they have this wonderful way of putting together and arranging the vocal harmonies, which I absolutely adore. Not too far removed here, but coming from more, I think Big Elf, I think these guys are coming more from a symphonic prog standpoint than Big Elf, but there's definitely similarities. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Okay. My last one, I do have a few honorable mentions later set out here, but my last one is, again, this is along the lines of, I wanted to pick bands that I think are absolute geniuses, godly, just amazing stuff. Last Crack. So this is a band that, you know, it's not that long ago. This is 1991, but I'm noticing that this is another band that people are forgetting and they aren't really talked about very much anymore. I find this a little bit, this reminds me a little bit of the idea of, I know we're going to do a Tea Party ranking eventually, and sort of that messianic quality of Jeff Martin or U2 or even Eddie Vedder and Pearl Jam, right? That when a band comes along, or Jim Morrison, this band has that, and it's in the guise of Buddo, the lead vocalist and lyric writer. I mean, here's what he looks like on one of the CD singles. There is kind of a Jeff Martin vibe to him, and the amazing vocals. Here he is on the original. This is the first album, which is great as well. And it's just a little bit raw. It's not as produced as Burning Time. Burning Time, I believe it's produced by Matt Wallace. Is it? Hang on, where do we got here? Oh, Dave Jordan. Sorry. Dave Jordan produced this exquisitely. So what this album is, for those who don't know Last Crack, they only made the 2 albums. They've got this live one from later. And then they did a reunion album in 2019 called The Uprising, which is just the same kind of amazing music. And the way I would describe this band is it's a little bit prog metal. It's a little bit Soundgarden. I would say a tiny bit King's X, pre-Big Elf, maybe. Boy, I'm not doing that well with this because
it's a real hard one to classify. I agree with you. I like the King's X comparison, sort of, right?
And the production is absolutely pristine. It's like beautiful early 90s, perfect in every way production, huge vocals, a lot of cool effects, some vocal rounds and echoes going on, but every song on it is just so beautifully written and unique. I would say it's like the best prog metal you've ever heard, but it's not particularly over the top prog metal. It's more like really creative. You know who else it reminds me of? Actually, I didn't even think about this. Ian Astbury and the Cult. It's got that kind of super reverence for creativity in it, and that's lyrically, even with vocals, but definitely with music as well. An absolute masterpiece, a 10 out of 10. They came out on Roadrunner, Road Racer. This one says Road Racer, but I mean, the song titles, I mean, look at that band shot. Like that's kind of sums it all up right there.
Yep.
They're just really obsessive creatives. You could tell they're on the edge of mental issues. The names of the songs: Wicked Sandbox, Mini Toboggan, Energy Mind, My Burning Time, Precious Human Stress, Love, Craig, Kiss A the Cold, Love or Surrender, Mac Bolasses, Blue Fly, Fish Sky, Papa Mugaya, Downbeat Dirt Messiah, and Ooh. And that kind of sums it up as well. But it's not flagrantly and flippant and weird. It's like super serious masterpiece, well put together. Like I say, kind of progressive metal. So yeah, just another band where I just think they're absolutely godly. They should have been huge. But I mean, it's, when I say that, it's one of these should have been huge, but it's kind of like, it's just too obscure to be super huge, like a Max Webster, even like a King's X, really, in a lot of ways. King's X is an odd one because they actually should have been huge, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of smash singles there. This is not a smash single kind of band, but it's as accomplished as that. It's almost like a Big Elf situation should have been huge, where you go. I did a whole episode actually on this as well. Of my podcast. I called it Smarty Pants Metal, right? Yeah. It's Mastodon, it's Opeth, it's Big Elf, it's King's X. It's like these guys are smarty pantses. And that's exactly what Last Crack is. Yeah.
And you mentioned the shoulda, coulda, woulda. I think that's a perfect band where the timing factor played a big part in it. That band was born in the wrong era based on the type of music that they were playing. So, if those albums come out a decade or even 15 years before they actually did, would more people know of them? When that type of smarty pants rocker metal was a little more common and a little more acceptable to the masses. I don't know. Could be.
Yeah, it's a hard one. Where can you put a band like that? They're just so unique. But I think the other way they could have been huge is, honestly, it's that messianic quality, right? Certain bands break through where you think this guy is like the savior of the world. Bruce Springsteen, Eddie Vedder, U2. No one was more messianic than U2 around Joshua Tree, right? It's that kind of thing, like Jim Morrison, of course. So it's almost like he could have been on the cover of Time magazine, Butto, in a weird way, in an alternate universe, right?
Yeah, but what's really weird though, because I mean, they came out in an era where guys like Eddie Vedder and Kurt Cobain and others were kind of put on that pedestal. Yeah. So why not them, right?
Perry Farrell, right?
Yeah.
Same kind of thing.
Yeah. Interesting. The whole what if scenario, right? Yeah. All right. My last choice for today, we're going to go all the way back to 1972. Another UK band here. These guys originally signed to RCA Records, right? So it's amazing when you see all these like really obscure bands that were actually signed to major labels and then just inexplicably disappeared off the face of the earth. This is actually the second album for this band. The album is called Lady Lake. The band is called Gnidralog.
Okay.
Look at that album cover, huh?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And there's the guys in the band. So the band is comprised of the Goldring brothers, Colin and Stewart on vocals, guitars, and reeds, and future Pat Travers band bassist Mars Cowling.
Nice.
Actually played bass for this band, along with drummer Nigel Pegram, who also played flute and oboe, and sax and flute player John Earl. So the music on this album is a really eclectic mix of like early proto-prog, jazz, a little bit of jazz, a little bit of folk, not that far removed from the kind of the Canterbury prog scene. So for those watching, if you're familiar with bands like Caravan and Hatfield in the North, it has like little jazzy, quirky moments like that. You can hear lots of Jethro Tull references on here. Some of the arrangements have that kind of like early Tull, like stand-up benefit, kind of like bluesy rock, folky feel. There's some, you can hear some Van de Graaff Generator, a little bit of Gentle Giant, a little bit of Moody Blues. Lots of flute and sax permeate all the arrangements. It's not a very guitar-based band, although there is plenty of guitar on here. And I like the way the band goes back and forth between the folky and the jazzy elements. And, you know, songs like I Could Never Be a Soldier, really great song, outstanding vocals. A Dog with No Collar, the title track, Lady Lake, is outstanding. But I think that the reason why this album didn't really do well, and then the reason why they, you know, subsequently broke up and the band dropped them from, or the label dropped them from the label, is it doesn't really fit into any sort of category, and every song sounds like really different than the one that came before it. It's almost like there's too much variety here, which I think for folks who appreciate like the more progressive music that came out of this era, this will be a joy to listen to because of the eclecticism that's contained on there. But it's not a very overly accessible album for the masses, if that makes any sense at all. But I think it's a really, really strong record. I've had this for ages, and it's one of those bands that, like, you look at all the really notable acts, progressive acts of this era, and they're not that much different as far as their kind of weirdness and eclecticism, but they're one of the more obscure ones for a variety of reasons, even though they were on RCA Records. So yeah, Gnidralog, it's a crazy band name too, right? Like most people would see that and be like, how the hell you say that? Gnidralog, whatever. But
I think that's Welsh. I mean, what is, I don't know. I mean, or some, you know, literary reference, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I believe guys in the band, I think the Goldring brothers were actually Welsh, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so that could very well be. But outstanding album cover. I mean, come on, Martin. If we were buying records in 1972 and we were going through the record racks in our favorite shop, and you saw this, would you buy this just based sight unseen, based on that album cover art? I would have.
I would have hoped I would have been able to read the back cover and see the reeds and the saxes and the flutes.
And then you wouldn't have, right?
Okay, put this back. Thank you.
You know what? I probably would have done the same back when I was a kid, because I didn't listen to any music that had reeds or sax or flute. This age, if I saw this sight unseen and I saw all the instruments on there, I'd be like, oh, definitely now I would buy it. But yeah, back in the 70s, I would have been like, not heavy enough. But that album cover sure rules, right? So,
but the back cover, show me the back cover again. Oh, okay. No, I was thinking of a different band. Yeah, I guess, it depends what they show you for, that's what you were showing. Yeah, if I would have seen that, I definitely would have bought it, right?
Yeah.
That in the front cover, it's like, absolutely, that's a sale.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because if you look at the band picture, they look like a bunch of, hard rockers, right? I mean, it's like they don't look any different than Sabbath or any of those other guys, all the long hair and stuff. Yeah. So, yeah, very cool band though. Really cool band.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's throw in a couple honorable mentions. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay, I'll be very quick. The Big F, kind of a cool LA post grungy band, atmospheric, tribal sort of sounds. Then there's this bad boy here. Remember this one? The Search Party, Montgomery Chapel. This is like Jesus Freak 1969 psychedelic, very creepy. Reminds you of the vibe you got from the first Trouble album. Only it's you know, with the punishing God kind of thing. It has a bit of that doomy sort of cult thing. It's this is the kind of band that the Black Sabbath guys were scared about when they came to America. So that's a really cool one. Search Party. They only made the one album. Liquid Jesus. This cool, grungy, creative band, you know, an L band like Last Crack from around the same era, and always considered them sort of brethren. But it's a little more grungy. Maybe Last Crack crossed with Blind Melon, put it that way. Jesus Christ. This is a very heavy grunge band from Toronto, 1994. They only made the one album. It's just good, punishing, heavy grunge. Toronto didn't have much of a grunge scene, but they were a cool band. And then finally, kind of a more famous grunge band, Paw Dragline. These guys were from Lawrence, Kansas. This is an absolute masterpiece. It's one of my favorite grungy sort of albums. And then they did these other ones later, which were kind of short and not as good, but Dragline is an absolute masterpiece of just heavy, you know, almost like early Clutch, you know, it's that kind of feel, right? So there you go. Honorable mentions.
Cool. I only grabbed one because I wasn't sure if we would be able to squeeze out a second episode of this. I guess we'll see how the comments are going on this. I could definitI grab 5 more.
I think I could probably do it again. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. So for those watching, if you want to see part 2 of this, please let us know in the comments below. So I only grabbed one for today, and I've talked about these guys before, which is why I saved this one for an honorable mention today. So this is a U.S. band from St. Louis, Missouri. They released this album in 1977, one and done. This is not quite the masterpiece that the other 5 that I show, but I really like this album a lot. It's called Assault on Maryland. The album is the band is Surprise. Let me take that out of the
wow,
so you can see that a little better. Look at that. I mean, how busy is that cover, right? And it's basically like a sort of like a map of this Maryland place. Yes, this is a prog album. Yes, this is a concept album about Maryland and the creatures that are invading the Maryland, blah, blah, blah. Cool. Here, I'll show you a picture of the guys of the band. There they are right there. Yeah. Kind of look like Styx, right? Well, the music is kind of along those same lines. Think like early Styx, you know, maybe Grand Illusion, Crystal Ball era Styx, early Kansas, a little bit of Yes, a little bit of Wishbone Ash, a little bit of Gentle Giant. Kind of, it's prog. It's a little bit of hard rock. It's definitely that whole pop thing. The concept of the album is a little on the hokey side. You know, you got Tyrangatide is the creature that's attacking Maryland, and it fluctuates between this kind of like bright kind of Queen upbeat, like very hook laden melodies and things like that, with some crunchy guitars at times, loads of keyboards. It's a lot of fun. This from, you know, I often, when I talk about this album, you know, like sometimes you have films that you really like that are really, really cheesy, but you love them anyway. Like those, it's so bad it's good. That's kind of like this. This is an absolute 70s obscure prog cheese fest, but I absolutely love it. It's so much fun. If you like a lot of the bands I mentioned, you can have a really good time with this. You know, Rickenbacker bass, Taurus bass pedals, loads of like Hammond organ and Moog synths, and you know, nice guitar work. The drums are good. The vocals are pretty decent. They're not awesome, but they're pretty decent. It's a really cool obscurity. And this is like nearly impossible to find. I don't even remember who I bought this from. I bought this in the early 90s, probably from Greg Walker at Symphonic Records, I would think. And I think if you're trying to find like a copy of this on LP or CD now, major bucks. It's and this was independently released at the time. This wasn't like a major label deal or anything like that. So Surprise is the band. Assault on Maryland, 1977. There you go.
Nice. Very cool. Wow. Boy,
so yeah, so you guys all have lots to go check out and listen to. So like I said, investigate some of these albums, and hopefully you find what we love so much about them. That's, I think, all we can kind of hope for. If you don't dig them, hey, that's reality, right? You never know. So, but if you find a couple favorites out of all these, we've done our job. So Martin, what's going on over in your neck of the woods? Podcast, Contrarians, books, what's happening?
Yeah, so History in 5 Songs, the last episode, I don't even remember what it was about, so whatever. I went up a couple days ago. What was it about? I don't know. Contrarians, we did the Duke thing. We've got a Technical Ecstasy going up soon. Myself and Tim Derling, we did what did we cover? Oh yeah, the worst White Snake album. That's the next episode coming up of Contrarians. I've got my book, Dream Evil Dio in the 80s, coming out in a couple of weeks. And I've got my big lavish David Bowie book coming out soon. Oh, but the box arrived. So those as well, that UFO visual biography and Judas Priest visual biography are just in a little while ago.
Reviews coming on here on Sea of Tranquility, hopefully next week. So
all right, nice.
Not next Wednesday, the Wednesday after. Of course, I got to find time to read all this stuff.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Well, fortunately, there's not much to read. They're more reference books because of the timeline situation, right? So pretty easy to surmise what they're all about. Yeah, but big heavy books there, and that's all martinpopoff.com.
There you go. Cool. So stay tuned, everybody, for more stuff happening here on the channel. Martin and I will be back together once again next Friday. We've got coming up this weekend. We got a really, really fun show for you tomorrow on the UK Connection. So Simon Bray, Stephen Reed, and myself are going to be breaking down our favorite and least favorite Judas Priest albums. This was loads of fun to talk with these two gentlemen about Judas Priest for an hour plus. So that's coming up tomorrow. Bring a ice cold beer or two and be ready to laugh quite a bit as well as hear some insight from us on these albums, why we love them, why we don't love them. That's coming up tomorrow. And then we have on Sunday, we've got album homework assignment with George LeMay and Sean Tonar. So that's coming up on Sunday. And then, of course, we start the whole week over again with the Hudson Valley Squares. The Hudson Valley Squares topic for Monday, it's another fun one. Each one of us are going to pick our 3 favorite bands and the one song from each band that we really don't like much at all. So it's kind of one of those fun little episodes where we talk about stuff we don't like from bands we love, right? So that's happening on Monday. And then, like I said, we've got In the Prog Seat coming up on Tuesday. Wednesday is new album review day. We've got new Michael Harris, new Ty Tabor. We've got what else? Jonas Lindberg. Hopefully reviews of Martin's 2 books that I just showed you. Thursday, we've got the Monsters Den, where Jamie Laszlo and I are going to be talking. We're going to be ranking the Ray Harryhausen films. All right. So if you love all the stop motion monsters and creatures that Ray Harryhausen created throughout his career, we're going to rank all those 15 films. That's coming up next Thursday on the Monsters Den. And then it's Friday, and Martin and I are back with you. So stay tuned for that. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. For Martin Popoff, I am Pete Pardo. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody, and see you later on. Take care. Bye-bye.